I'm John Travis in Mullumbimby, New South Wales on the 16th of April, 2025, talking to Hannah, formerly known as Betty Idarius in Ukiah, California, where it
Uh,
is only April 15th, 2025. And
right.
we've known each other over 30 years. You were our midwife and my 32-year-old daughter.
Uh,
We've been through so many different things together. I really see you as one of the up and coming pioneers of wellness, the next generation, and
aw.
want to document who you are and why. So let's start with your origins and where and when and how you were born and
Oh my
siblings,
God.
that
Way
stuff.
back then.
Yeah, way back then. That's where it all starts.
Oh
Or
my goodness.
conception. Do you know, remember your conception? Conception?
No, no, I've had glimpses of it,
Uh-huh.
through going back there with rebirthing sessions. Yeah, my birth was pretty traumatic for me as a baby, and I actually think that's what sent me on the path to being a midwife and,
Hmm.
being interested in working with pre and perinatal trauma. Um, so let's see, my parents were both Holocaust survivors, and most of their families were killed in the war, and then they went to what a heavy thing to start off the interview with, but it's the
Yeah.
way it's how it is. You asked
Well,
my origin, so
that's how Gabor starts his talks.
yeah, he's a lot braver, I think, than I am, letting
What, you're
himself.
not brave? You don't think you're brave? Oh, come
uh,
on.
Thanks, Jack.
Now, were your
Appreciate.
parents actually in camps and survived the?
Mother was. My mother was in a camp for 5 years. She was in Auschwitz for a year and a
Oh,
half.
wow.
Yeah, which is amazing because I guess the average lifespan for someone going into Auschwitz was 20 days.
Wow.
So she survived for a year and a half. I have no idea. I have no idea.
Hmm.
She couldn't explain it either. So um, yeah, so that, pretty devastating life events. And then they went to, then they're both from small villages in Poland. And then after the war, they went to France because there was a cousin there that did survive, and they were matched with each other. And my father was told, okay, your job is to take care of her, and my mother, your job is to take care of him and move on with life,
Who
you
matched
know?
them? A matchmaker or?
Uh, a cousin, a
Hmm.
cousin. Yeah, yeah,
With a cousin of one of them or both?
yeah, yeah, a cousin of my mom's.
Hmm.
The way that I was told the story. Yeah. So, the survivors after the war just wanted to find out who survived and who didn't. And they found out that most of their family had been killed. And so it was like, okay, now what? Right. Pretty devastating event. And so they were matched. It's like, okay, we're going to move on with life, and you two are going to take care of each other. And they went, okay. Um, so they had my brother first, and 4 years older than me, and then myself. And
Still in France?
yeah, I was born in Paris. Jack, did
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. That's yeah. I was born in Paris and lived there until I was almost 6 years old. And then we immigrated to the States. And it's kind of a strange twist of fate there, but we ended up in Dallas, Texas, because my father was an amazing tailor, and Neiman Marcus hired him to be a tailor. So he was the only man on the floor. It was all women and my dad,
Hmm.
Neiman Marcus in Dallas. So yeah, then I grew up there.
And you
So
don't
can you
have
imagine
a French or
culture
a
shock?
Texas accent.
Thank you. French. Can you imagine the culture shock I went through? Going through
No.
course, France, yeah. Yeah, unbelievable. None of us spoke English. None of us, I mean, my parents didn't drive a car. We didn't know anyone. Yeah, it was talk about survivors.
Wow.
They
And but the Neiman Marcus brought the family in, and did they provide a home, or how'd you
the
land?
Jewish Welfare Federation
Oh,
provided help and assistance, and I think got my dad the interview there. And yeah, the Jewish community is very tight there. So, an immigrant
mm,
came. I mean, they really learned the lesson of we have to take care of each other in order to survive.
mm.
So they and they ended up helping a lot of people too that immigrated. And
They being your
yeah, my parents,
hmm
yeah, they were always helping someone or another to find a doctor, to find a job, to learn how to drive, learn how to speak English. Our home was a hub for that.
And how was learning English for you at 6? You're probably pretty quick.
I was pretty quick, and I pretty sure, at least the way my memory goes, is I was the first one to really learn. My brother did too, but it was under pressure because I was kept out of school for a year. I mean, because I couldn't speak English,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So I really wanted to learn, and at some point in that year, we got a TV, which is incredible. I don't even know how they afforded to get a TV, but anyway, we had a TV, so I would watch and I would learn and be outside with the kids. But it was hard because I got teased a lot and made fun of a lot, because I dressed differently from France, and my mother braided my hair, with little colored ribbons, which was like a really beautiful connection that we had. And the kids would tease me because I didn't speak English. I spoke this strange language, and kids can be awful.
Evil. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. So I did learn English quickly, and it was under stress, a lot of stress.
Mm.
Yeah. And it
What
was my
television?
first language, by the way.
I'm not sure. You're younger than me. What television shows you would have been learning English from?
I I can't even
Oh,
remember. I really don't remember. I remember being in the front yard a lot, just wondering about life.
mm. And how
Yeah.
was it with your brother?
How was it for me with my brother?
Yeah, how did you get
We
along?
weren't really close until we got older. I think we both went into shock, and we're just surviving the best we knew how. So, my home wasn't it was hard having a survivor mother, is the
Mhm.
best way I can put it. She was not a happy woman. She was a survivor. She was tough as nails. But coming to the States, another big change like that was very, very hard for her. So I didn't like being in the house with her much.
So, earlier memories of bonding or not with your mother, how was that?
Um, I I've done a lot of rebirthing, so to remember my birth. And my mother was given twilight sleep.
Hmm.
uh, so she of course doesn't remember, but during labor she was tied down, and it's just so awful,
Oh,
just um and so she was hallucinating that she was in the camps
oh boy.
and that she was being tortured. So yeah, talk about cortisol. I was yeah,
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 shocking.
yeah, yeah, during pregnancy also. And yeah, not a pleasant birth. And I believe that was a big inspiration for me to want to support gentle childbirth,
Yeah.
you know, for other babies coming in and support for moms because she didn't get any support.
Hmm.
You know, talked about the Holocaust back then. It was like a hushed thing. And so it wasn't, I think, until the 1970s that it was really a topic and looked into.
And
Yeah.
were you breastfed, you know?
According to her, you know, that she breastfed me for, I think, a couple of weeks or a couple of months. It wasn't very long. Yeah. And then she bottle fed me and I threw up a lot. I had stomach issues. And so she would bottle feed me more. So it was like force feeding. She was afraid. I mean, we're talking about a woman that was severely traumatized, severely traumatized. So she was afraid that I was going to die. Right. So she didn't
Yeah.
have the instincts for how to take care of me, you know, and the doctor would come to our house. And I remember I had a lot of upper respiratory infections. I'd get penicillin injections and
Oh boy. Your
yeah,
microbiome must have been
uh-huh.
wild and crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
So any,
definitely.
any other memories from Paris before you got to
Yeah, I remember going to kindergarten. I'd walk with, um, you know, some of the kids that lived on our block and my brother. And I really loved going to school. And then on the way home, one of the children's parents owned a candy store. So we we could stop by and you know, they had these paper cones, you know, that yeah, a cone, and then inside it was, you know, folded over on top, and inside was all this candy. So that was a nice incentive.
Yeah.
So I remember that, and you know, I remember. I mean, we went back when I was 16, and the butcher shop, the man was still on the corner, you know, of the street, and
Uh-huh.
remember my mom, and yeah. So I remember the apartment we lived in, things like
Wow.
that. And I had a second cousin that lived across the street, and we would play together. And yeah,
So you had friends and a support, supportive environment, all that ripped away from you
yeah,
and foreign language. What a
yeah,
shock.
quite at that age, you know, that's kind of where you're becoming independent and,
Yeah.
you know, who you are in the world. Yeah, it
Probably
was not
did
easy.
help develop some secure attachment of at least you had up to age 6, uh, somewhat of a supportive environment to make up for the birth trauma. And
Somewhat. And, you know, it's interesting because I'm in the middle of reading a book called Mother Hunger, right? And it's about attachment and you know, like a mother is one that provides nurturance and protection and guidance, those three qualities. And I didn't feel safe with my mother
hmm.
because she didn't know how to be gentle. You know, she just thought I was a finicky baby, but it I mean, always a sensitive child. It's just I just I didn't feel safe and protected. I felt afraid of her. She was really intense, Jack. You know, a wonderful person, but very intense.
Yeah. I don't know that book. Who's the author?
Kelly McDaniel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, wonderful book.
Sounds like it. Yeah. So any other French connections, or shall we pick up in Dallas?
um, We can pick up in Dallas. Yeah.
Okay. And if you think of anything, we can
I
go
have to
back.
go to Dallas. I want to stay in Paris. I could feel this child in me going, do we have to do that? No, let's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So then did you enter school as in second grade then, or?
Well, I was, what was I? I guess I was 8 years old or almost eight. And I entered first grade. So I had to go through first grade
Mm,
first. Right.
hmm.
Yeah. And, I remember they gave us what was it, an IQ test, an SAT test or something like that in the first grade. And
Wow.
it's just, yeah, yeah. And, however you did there was going to give them information on, how to best educate you. But I remember that I didn't know the difference between right and left,
I didn't
right?
either until I was a teen.
Really?
My aunt was shocked that I didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, after the test, where I was like so stressed, because it was this important test, finally made it to school in America. And I I made up a little limerick, to help myself remember right and left. But yeah. And I was just different. I mean, I had Holocaust survivor parents
Yeah.
and I
Now,
couldn't really talk about it, to anyone because they'd go into shock,
did
right? They didn't say. Mhm.
did you catch up with your same age cohort by skipping any grades, or were you
I
always?
was always the older. I was
Uh,
always a little bit older, which is fine. And
uh
wasn't, yeah, yeah.
And school was okay, and otherwise you.
School was okay. I mean, I always felt like I was the ugly duckling or the oddball, always different. But I made friends and yeah, I always had one good friend that I'm
Mhm.
still friends with. Actually, I have her picture right here. This is this is
Wow.
Linda.
Huh.
Yeah, there I am. That was preteen.
Hold it a little closer to the camera so we can see it better.
Oh, let's see. Right
And
there.
are you on the right or the left?
I
It's
am
small.
that that way. The one with the
Okay. Yeah.
flower pin on.
All right. What a trip to have that picture.
Yeah. I remember Linda was just, yeah, she still is. We're still in contact. And I remember one day we were walking and she told me she wanted to be a missionary. She wanted to go to Africa and help people. And this like light bulb went off on me. It's like, wow, you can dedicate your life to helping other people. Like, right? I didn't have that as a concept. And I remember that moment. And yeah, it was the inspiration from Linda.
Wow. What a moment to remember. So,
Yeah.
and then on through junior high school. How was that?
Um, it was okay. I mean, I have so many stories, Jack. So, but when I was in seventh grade, oh God, I don't know if I should go into this, but there was the library teacher got upset with one of the students and grabbed him by the hair and started banging his head on the
Oh,
wall. And I was so outraged that I organized a few kids and we went to the principal's office to let him know that what had happened and how unacceptable that was.
good for you.
Well, yeah, and when the other teachers found out about it, my home, what do they call it?
Homeroom.
homeroom. Thank you. Teacher found out about it. She was really upset. And she made sure that I was not allowed to go into honors moving forward into
Oh,
junior high and high school because of that.
oh boy.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is right before that happened, we had done a homework project that, about our lives. And so she knew I was an immigrant. She knew I was Jewish then. She knew my background. And I just wonder how much of that played into her prejudice towards
Mm.
me. Yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of the I don't know what to call it, but moving it was quite a trauma, I guess, to have that happen. And
Sure.
yeah.
It's amazing that you didn't shut down and become a one of the sheep, but you continued with your
Well,
life.
I I've got these two sides, Jack. Like I try to hide, and not let myself be known so that I don't, get that kind of backlash. And I've got this big move forward and live your life and do innovative things and help other
Pioneer.
people. Pioneer. Thank you. Aw, thank you. So I've got both,
Yeah.
right? They've learned to pretty much get along with each other, these two parts, pretty much. Yeah.
Social life in high school, did you date or?
I dated a little bit. It was pretty awkward for me. Um, yeah, I did not ever back then learn, how to, it was just awkward. I think it was awkward for anybody, right?
Yeah. But you had
Dating.
a
Uh,
disadvantage. You were probably what, 2 years older than classmates and
one
uh
one year, one
oh,
year
only
older.
1 year. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I was shy, but I was in the drill team. I was really good at dancing, and
Hmm.
then
What's a drill team? Like cheerleaders or?
the halftime at football games
Yeah.
with the pom poms and the little hats, and
Oh, uh, different than cheerleaders then.
different than cheerleaders. Yes,
Part
the
of the
drill
band.
it they it was like the band would play, and then the drill team would go out and do dance
Uh-huh. Like with
routines.
batons and things like that, twirling
Yeah,
batons.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But not
My high,
cheerleaders, separate.
my high school was too small. Our band was barely able
Oh,
to.
wow. Yeah,
Oh, they did have
yeah,
a durette out front with a baton, but nothing fancy.
yeah.
46 of us graduated from my high school senior class, so it's pretty small.
Uh-huh. I was
Was this a big high school? And
It was pretty big. Yeah, Dallas was pretty big. And then when I was 16, so was that like my junior year?
that'd be about right, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I went with my mother back to Paris and then to Israel.
Hmm.
And when I went back to Paris, I had this fantasy that I was going home, finally going home.
Well, you were in a sense.
I was, and I, got the message that it would never be the
Hmm.
home that, it couldn't be anymore. And then we went to Israel also, and she had a reunion with the young women that she was with when the camps were liberated.
Hmm.
So they had a reunion, and that was amazing. That was really amazing hearing their stories, and wow, over the top. They kept each other alive.
Hmm.
Yeah, and stayed connected, afterwards. So yeah.
And with your father, what kind of connection did you have with him?
Um, my father was a very warm, gentle, very different than my mother. My mother was very tough and strong and, don't mess with me. And my father was, he was a love. Back in the old country, I guess they had nicknames for um, their families. Different families had different nicknames, and my father's family were known as the Angels because if anyone needed anything, they could go. And his father was a grocer, a wholesale grocer, and get help. So um, we were close, and he. Mm, yeah, I wished he had stepped in more
Hmm.
to protect me from my mother, but it wasn't part of what men did or something. It was like, the women raised the children and he was going off and working, but yeah,
So you graduated, and
I did.
what happened after that? What did you go to college or?
I went to college in Austin, Texas, but just for a semester, and I was ready to break free. I could not be contained in the um, in an institution of education that was telling me what to do.
Yeah.
I just had, and so I traveled and I went to Israel. My brother was there and my cousin were there, and then traveled through Asia on our way to India. And once we got to Afghanistan, the war between Pakistan and India broke out. And so I was in Afghanistan. We were in Afghanistan, my cousin and I, for a couple of months, waiting for that to be over. Um, had wonderful experiences with the Afghani people and the Bedouin women. And
Mm.
yeah, it was quite wonderful. I felt free, and I loved just seeing what was happening outside of Texas.
Yeah, big difference. Were you traveling with anyone or?
Yeah, with my cousin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Male or
Hmm.
female?
Male.
Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
and did your brother live in Israel? Is that why you visited him there, or was he
He
visiting?
was he was just visiting there. Yeah. And was living with my cousin, and it's kind of a convoluted long story that I don't want to totally go into,
Yeah,
but
that's
um,
okay.
yeah. So he left and we left and we traveled.
And then you got to India?
Did not make it to India
Oh,
then
oh,
because we were in Afghanistan for 2 months waiting for the border to open between Pakistan and India, and it didn't. So we decided to come back to Europe. We bought beadwork in Afghanistan and brought it back to Europe and sold it on the streets, to make money.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm,
where all in Europe did you go?
where were we? Gosh, Jack, I've had a number of trips back to Europe since then. So, I mean,
Like,
we were in France for sure.
hmm anything in Poland from your parents' roots or?
Oh, no, no one, no one survived.
Mm,
You know, their homes were taken away, their businesses were taken away.
mm.
No.
So after your travels, what was your next step?
Oh my goodness. I think I went back to school for another semester,
In Austin?
and yeah, and still didn't like it much. You know? So I ended up, my cousin tried to get into the US and they refused him. And so he ended up going to Canada. And so I went up there to visit him and ended up living there.
Mm. Whereabouts?
in well, first it was Calgary, and then we went to Vancouver, and then we went to the Kootenay Valley, and we're part of a community that we formed there, back to the land type of community. And that's when I started midwifery because
Where's Kootenay Valley? Is that BC?
yeah, British Columbia. Yeah, it's just kind of north of Spokane, Washington, in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
South of
Yeah.
Vancouver or?
It's east of Vancouver,
Oh,
like
okay.
almost to Alberta. So it's on the
Oh, okay.
east, yeah, all the way. Hmm.
So yeah,
Beautiful mountains, and, you
uh,
know.
I have a lot of interest in community living. So say more about how that was. You formed a
Oh,
community?
we formed a community. Yeah. My cousin Gabriel was um what? Uh he I don't even know how to say this, but he was speaking at different gatherings, and we were into healing and natural living, and people would come to stay, and some people stayed longer than others, but we always had people coming through. And we had Native Americans that like Sun Bear was our sister community just outside of Spokane. So we learned a lot of how to live close to the land, how to farm, how to live in a sacred way, and how to respect the earth, how to respect the feminine principle of life. Um, and I loved it. I loved living that way.
How did you accomplish getting the land?
Someone that owned the land invited us to come and,
Oh,
be there.
and they
Yeah.
participated also in the community, or
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
sounding like late 70s or mid 70s?
It was mid 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Back to the land movement.
Yeah, it was really big.
It was really big. Right. And so, women were getting pregnant. I wasn't one of them back then. And so I was going to births. And then pretty soon I had more experience than anyone, and I apprenticed with a doctor who was apprenticing. I think there were like five midwives. She was training us. It was
Mm,
illegal. It was illegal then,
of
right?
course. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What, home births in general or training?
Home births.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so definitely training midwives, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah. So I would go to births with my spiritual midwifery book and Ina May
Yeah.
Gaskin, right? And I'd be looking right in there, and that was my beginnings.
So, so you
Yeah. And
haven't had
what was
any,
I just want to share this. I realize now how fortunate I was to have had that experience, because women really trusted their bodies then, right? They
yeah.
believed their bodies. They were so I I mean, I had such rare transports to the hospital. Plus the hospital was like, 2 hours away. So um it was just wonderful to have that experience of a woman who was really believing in herself and empowered, and I can do this, just beautiful, beautiful births.
And this was back around where you had the community and were these community
Yeah.
members or?
Community members and people around in the area.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How big did the community get?
Oh, gosh. Good question.
Like
I mean,
dozens?
it wasn't huge, but I don't know, there was like probably a core of maybe 10 people. And then there were people that were coming through for, different periods of time. So, I mean, we always welcome people and we put them to work. And, you know,
Of course.
uh, Of course. Yeah. So it was always different. Yeah.
So what was the next step after that? Did,
Um,
did the community keep going after you left, or did it uh, dissolve, or how?
no, it did keep going. I mean, it was a community, but living on the side of a mountain. But there, there was also people that owned their own parcels, so it wasn't just community.
Hmm.
It was kind of community. But we also had land where people could come and stay. Then there were, people that owned other properties on the mountain, and that was all part of the community. So at a certain point, I wanted to study midwifery um, in different places. Actually, Janine Parvati Baker
Oh yeah.
was an inspiration, so I went down to Santa Cruz to study with her. Um, naively believing that, because I wrote to her and she said, "Oh yeah, come down and you can study with me." And I thought it was an open invitation. But when I got there, it was like, oh, she charges money for courses. And
Mm.
it wasn't it wasn't the way I was living, like even doing births in British Columbia, I was always trading. I got wonderful handcrafted items and different things, but it was a different reality. So, but I did, study midwifery there more in Santa Cruz, and then I met Eric. Went to San Francisco.
How,
Yeah,
where was he? What
he
was he?
was living in Aya, but he was a yurt builder, right?
Hmm.
And so I went to it was like a home and health fair at Fort Mason, and I walked in, and there was this little yurt, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so amazing. I wanted to build one up in British Columbia. So I went in, and there was Eric swinging in a hammock chair, from the yurt. Um, yeah. So I kind of had a decision of, do I go back to British Columbia or do I stay here and be with Eric? Because he had at that time a 3-year-old son, and needed, I mean, I got it. He needed to be with Bodie.
Hmm.
So
I
I
remember
chose,
Bodie a long time ago.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I didn't go back to British Columbia to live there.
So you went on to Ukiah with Eric, or
Yes,
it's like love
yes.
at first sight, or did you have a
It really was. It was like I remember our first date together was like meeting an old friend that you'd known forever.
wow?
And just felt so safe with each other, and similar values, similar, what we wanted from our lives.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, it was great. It was like coming home, meeting him for sure.
Well, now when I tracked you down, you were in, was it Arizona or New Mexico? You weren't in Ukiah. I thought you came back to Ukiah.
We 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 left Ukiah. We ended up going to Eugene, Oregon for I think 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And we studied neurolinguistic programming with John Grinder. We formed the Oregon Center of NLP. So we
Wow.
um, gave trainings, and 6-month trainings with John. Ended up going to Bali, Indonesia with him, doing a cross cultural modeling training. And then we sold the business. And yeah, we broke up for a period of time when we went to Bali and did the cross cultural modeling, then came back. And I've had a lot of twists and turns in my life, Jack. I'm realizing just
Yeah.
shit with you. So we broke up for I think 6 months or something, and then uh
While you were both in Bali, or one stayed home?
it was before we went to Bali, and then definitely during and then after for sure.
So you were in
Yeah.
Bali separately, or I mean, you were
No,
still
we were there together because we organized this cross-cultural modeling training. So we
but the
had people
romantic
come in.
relationship had broken up.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And then we went to Arizona when we got back together, and we lived there for 7 years. And
Where in
I
Arizona?
Scottsdale, northern Scottsdale, out in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I challenged the midwifery law. So I was the first midwife that was licensed through apprenticeship because I never went through, official school. My application was 100 pages long. I had to document all the births that I had been at that were with a licensed person. So medical doctor or midwife or
Mm-hmm.
like that. And, I attended a lot of births in Arizona before I applied and then challenged the law and became licensed. Like, oh my goodness, I'm a licensed midwife now. So I was so used to, practicing illegally. I mean,
How did you
it was,
happen to take that? That sounds like an impossible task. And you
yeah.
accomplished it. What led to that?
Well, I was working with a midwife who was licensed, and she really encouraged me and she really supported me to do it. And so I did, and it worked. It was amazing. And I've been told that since then there's a number of more midwives that have challenged the law and gotten licensed through apprenticeship. I don't know the current state of it there, but yeah.
Yeah, home births seem to be on they're attacking them again, but it's, um,
Oh, everywhere.
even though I just saw another study about how they're safer than hospital births. And
Oh, absolutely. So much safer for
but,
mom and baby.
yeah,
Yeah.
so uh, that was, you were just moving to California when we found you and
Right.
had just
Right.
moved. I remember going over to Mendocino and Fort Bragg and talking to a midwife there that was, and it felt like going to a doctor's office. And, they said, do any home birth midwives? And it was like trying to make a drug deal or something. And this is in Mendocino County. And
Yeah.
we
Yeah. Yeah.
find someone in Arizona of all places. I don't know who gave us your name. And
Well, well, the you see, we okay, so after Arizona, we came back to Ukiah. So we were living in Ukiah then, and I went to Dallas to visit my parents, and I get a call from Jack Travis. I'm like, right. So it was in Dallas when I was visiting
oh,
my
okay,
parents. I totally remember your call, Jack. Hey, want to help us? We want to have a home birth. And I'm like, okay, sure.
I remember you were a little reluctant at first over the
Yeah.
phone to say yes, but we persisted.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember who told you about me or
No, it was somebody in Mendocino, but I
that
don't.
somehow had my parents' phone number? That was the strange part. I can't put that together still. But anyway, I'm super glad you called. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was in at first. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it was like
Picky about who I would support, and we hadn't met until I came back and we met. And
right. I remember that
yeah.
first meeting, and you were in a kind of a storage area, uh, temporary quarters of uh, across the road from where you live now, and
Oh, okay. Yeah, the place we were on David's property
yeah,
we
yeah.
lived. Uh-huh.
And then
Yeah.
I still remember, we had the loan of a birthing pool that the guy who bought our place in Sebastopol had. He'd been with Benny, what's her name in
B.
England.
Benny
Ar-
Dansby.
Yeah,
Benny Dansby. Hmm.
yeah. And so he lent us this inflatable pool, and because we were 7 miles off the grid, and um, it was
Yeah.
all solar, and I had to build a fire under a stock watering tank that was our hot tub outdoors and pump it in, and so
Yeah.
I still remember Maren was in late stage labor, but I think she skipped transition, didn't she? And I just remember saying, "Get in the water, your wife's having a baby." I got in the pool with her. It was like boom. And
Sienna.
yeah, I think you had me catch her. You were right on the other side. And then we
Hmm.
brought her to the surface and she looked us both in the eye. I was looking over Maren's shoulder at her and she just riveted this gaze on us and then didn't look at us for another 3 months. But
Oh,
that was quite the birth. And
yeah.
neither of us
Yeah.
bothered to notice the time exactly. And we guessed 9:15 on her birth certificate. But
Mm.
anyway, so that was our initial connection. And then I think we saw you for some follow-up mastitis that Maren had. And um, what next thing I remember is you were doing rebirthing, I think. Um, we went off to Virginia for 5 years and lived there in a community. And
Mhm.
we were out of touch pretty much. I'm trying to remember how we got back together. Because I remember you doing a session with me in rebirthing. Um, don't, because then we were off to Australia from Virginia, but
Uh-huh.
somehow we stayed in touch off and on.
Yeah. Yeah, we really have been in touch, Jack.
And
Just, you know, when the first time when Eric and I left Ukiah, we went to San Francisco and we lived at Theta House, which is the rebirthing community.
right, I was over there once. Yeah.
Right, right. So I did a lot of rebirthing, and that became like the method I used in supporting couples,
Hmm.
to get in touch with their own birth memories and clear them as much as possible. And I ended up attending my first water birth there, which was a couple, Bill and Marilyn Brown. Um, and it was in one of the rebirthing houses in San Francisco, and they had a tub, and I'd never been at a water birth before. And so there was myself and a pediatrician, and we were both like looking at each other and going, "This is different." And she said, "Well, if you stay, I'll stay." And I went, "Okay, if you stay, I'll stay." That was my first water birth. And it became a documentary, Water Babies. Carol Daniels, they
Yeah.
had hired her just to film it for them personally. And she was so enamored with what happened, which, I mean, it was amazing to have um, Merlana, I believe is her name,
Yeah.
was born underwater, her eyes open, fully aware, looking around, you know, grabbing her mother's hand and her father. And it was just such a beautiful experience. I mean, I fell in love with that as a way for, as an option, for women to definitely labor in water and birth in water if they wanted to. So um, I believe that was the fifth water birth in the US.
Mm.
And yeah, and then when we went to Arizona after that, I kind of became the water birth expert. So yeah, so just to put in that little bit.
Yeah. How did you arrange that? Did you have a portable tub or do it in bathtubs or?
Well, it was always the parents to be that were, but there were inflatable tubs. I think the one in San Francisco was a cattle trough. A lot of people use cattle troughs and, just a hose, hot water coming in and water going out somehow. So, yeah, make it work. Water births in bathtubs.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and the inflatable tubs. And then, some people would started renting them um, for people wanting to birth in water. And Ukiah has a water birth center. It's so wonderful.
Wow, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. You remember Full Circle Wellness Resource Center, the
mhm.
wellness
Yeah,
center that I was part of. Um, so
that's
we
your
sold.
baby, wasn't it? I thought you were
I
the brains
was
behind it. Yeah.
one of them. It was a group of women we
Uh-huh.
organized, had different health practitioners there. And then when it was time to move on, we sold it to two midwives, and they turned it into a water birth center, and still
Oh,
called Bloom. And it's beautiful. They remodeled it. I mean, it's gorgeous.
wow.
Yeah. And I got to share this, Jack, because Eric and I were just in India. We went to Kochi and Kerala, in the southern part of India, and we're taking a cab into Kochi, this town, and there's this big billboard, water birth, and so the local hospital has a water birth center for women to give birth, and it was just like, oh my God, what a journey from the
Yeah.
early days, right?
Well, I'm in touch with Barbara Harbour regularly, and she's traveled all over the world installing
Yes.
countless tubs and giving
Yeah.
workshops. Seems to be catching on more outside of the US than in the US.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we had read something of Michelle O'Donnell's. That's how we learned about water birth. And then uh, I guess yeah, we were looking for a water birth midwife when we found
Okay.
you. So
Yeah. Yeah.
somehow
Yeah.
that was already in the equation. So then,
Mhm.
what was the next step after midwifery for you?
Oh, well, we came back from Arizona. When we came back to California, midwifery was illegal here, you know? And there was like no way that I was going to be practicing illegally again. It's not an easy thing to do, and I was getting older. So,
They changed
um,
the law. I don't remember
no,
that
this
happening.
was before they enacted licensed midwifery. So you had to be a nurse midwife in order, and I wasn't. I was a direct entry
Mhm. Right.
licensed wife in Arizona. So it was not legal in California. And so I ended up going to homeopathic school, became a classical homeopath because I started using homeopathic medicines for women during pregnancy and birth and postpartum in Arizona. I happen to have a childbirth assistant that was familiar with it and saw amazing, benefit from homeopathy.
This was
So
back when you were still doing midwifery in Arizona.
in Arizona,
Well,
exactly.
you did the course in homeopathy there, or was it
No, then after Arizona, I know it's hard to keep up with all the twists and turns.
back and
After
forth?
Arizona, we came back to Ukiah,
Hmm.
back to California, and I couldn't get licensed here because there was no licensing for direct entry midwife yet. And so I decided to go to homeopathy school in Berkeley,
Oh,
Pacific Academy of Homeopathic Medicine. And I became a classical homeopath. So then I practiced for years, homeopathic medicine, specializing in women and children's health. And I wrote the book, The Homeopathic Childbirth Manual, which is still being used and all over the world, which is
still
really
in print?
gratifying. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. On Amazon. Hmm. Yeah. And then licensing happened. And so I had to go through the whole thing again. And I became licensed in California and practiced both as a homeopath and as a midwife.
Oh, see, two licensures. What was
Yeah.
that like? Complicated testing, or you
Oh
could do
my
it?
God. It was awful. It was like, do I have to do this again? But I was, I was grateful to be able to be licensed, but
Mhm.
no, it was stressful to do it all again. It's not an easy thing to, accomplish, but I did it.
Wow. And then the next thing I remember is you were doing family constellations, and how did that come into play, or is it a natural?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend slash client who um, knew of a constellation facilitator from Germany that wanted to come and do his work here. And so I sponsored him and was totally, because of my intergenerational trauma, transgenerational trauma, constellations just really piqued my interest. And so studied with him for a couple years and then started facilitating constellations along with homeopathy, along with midwifery, along with,
Three
yeah.
hats.
I'm a lifelong learner. I
Yeah.
finally surrendered to that. So, yeah, I love constellation work. It's super magical and wonderful and amazing what happens in a constellation.
And then career-wise, the next step was, well, tell us about it and how you got.
Yeah, let's see. I think when Eric was building our house, I had a lot of my trauma that was coming up again. And so he knew John Pateros, who was an NLP trainer and a hypnotherapist. And I connected with John and started working with him. And we developed what came to be known as process coaching. So it's a form of coaching where you're your own healer and you're learning how to relate with your emotions, with your feelings inside in a loving way rather than judging yourself and all of that. So we worked together for, I guess, 17 years. And yeah, until it was time to dissolve that. There was a lot of shadow, um, things that I was not aware of in myself and in him and the other two partners. And so it just, we did a lot of wonderful work, and then it was time for that to
Funny how that stuff is always around. Good
I
old
know, right?
shadow.
Good old shadow. Oh my God. Major shadow for me. Major. Yeah. So in that shadow, what uh I'm getting this, like I built, and then there wasn't the strong foundation for it. So it's like it crumbled, right? And it was in that during that
Now, the it that
I
crumbled was the professional organization that you were.
yeah, the organization that I was the director of, one of the owners of, that um we had coaches, we had teachers that we had trained, um that were getting, a lot of benefit from it. And then when the shadow part of it came out, it was heartbreaking for a lot of people and disillusioning to
Mhm.
them also, and to myself. But it was one of those big life learnings, right?
Mm,
Big life
yeah.
lessons. So right after that, while I was kind of floundering with all of it, not knowing, you know, how to steady myself, Gabor Mate came along. And
In what form?
I I don't remember exactly, but somehow I found out that he was, um, through his method is called compassionate inquiry, and that they had a year-long professional training. And I had read his book, When the Body Says No, and I was super impressed with his awareness of mind body connection, because I was a homeopath then and total mind body. Um, so then I, found out that he had this 1 year professional training, and it wasn't just learning a new technology, it was also working your own trauma, which I really needed to do after the big wake up call, after process coaching. And so that was like 4 years ago. And so I did the training, and then I became certified as a compassionate inquiry practitioner. And and then I was invited to develop a training course called The Portal, which is on pre and perinatal trauma and pre and perinatal health, how to support health, during that time, and how to notice when there's early trauma and how to work with it, work through it, etc. And we're just about at the end of our first pilot training. It's a 7-month course, and for professionals. Yeah, and we just started up our second cohort like a
Wow.
couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So we're training. It's so rewarding, Jack, that I, have this opportunity and support from Sat Dharam, who's the co-owner of Compassionate Inquiry, and Gabor, to do this work. And we've got doctors and midwives and doulas and therapists and lactation consultants and from all over the world.
Amazing. You just
Isn't that amazing?
put it all together.
Yeah. Yeah, myself and another midwife from Italy, Laura Latina,
Mm.
doing it. Yeah, I think that pretty much catches us up
Well,
to now.
that's your career. Let's go back to do some personal life because you had a
Okay.
baby around the same time we did. Uh, motherhood. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, actually, when we were in Arizona, I found out that I was not able to conceive. So we tried in vitro fertilization. It did not. Well, the last one worked, and then I miscarried. They thought that I had twins. So that was pretty huge for me as a
Yeah.
midwife, right? Because I wanted to have a baby, from the time I was little. I mean, I would write in my diary. I still have it, when I'm going to be a mom. And yeah, so pretty difficult time in my life. And also what majorly sent me in the direction of healing my trauma, because I was kind of, having pretty good success, good marriage, etc. I'm fine, nothing, nothing to see here. And then with the infertility, it was just like everything coming up. I need to look at this and deal with my own stuff more deeply than I have, because it's not like I hadn't, but definitely more deeply. So, and then we decided to adopt. And so sent out letters and you know, worked with an open adoption um, support person, um, and then got the contact. We were actually in British Columbia at the time, that Alice's mother had chosen us to be the parents
Mm.
of her child. And yeah, so she lived in Tucson. We came back and was involved with her pregnancy, and and Alice was born at a birth center there. We She was an hour and 15 minutes old when we arrived because we lived 2.5 hours away. I had and her birth mother, Lisa, had a 2.5 hour labor, her first baby. She called me after she had her first contraction. And I said, just go to the birth center, you know. And we made one stop because I had women that were pumping breast milk for me because I nursed Alice. So I used a little supplemental nursing system so she could nurse at my breast. I think I brought in about 70% of the milk that she needed, but it was slow over time. And then
You
she got,
personally brought, you mean you provided it yourself? 70%?
yes, so when a
Wow.
baby nurses on a woman's breast, even though she hasn't had the pregnancy that gives more milk ducts, she still, the
Or
gets
that's the
the
idea.
hormone. Yeah, and she can nurse. And I totally had Lisa's support around that, Alice's birth mother.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I had a baby, Jack.
Yeah.
It was in bliss. It was
And
wonderful.
that was before you moved back to Ukiah, right?
That's right. Yeah. So Alice was, I think, a year and a half when we came back.
Hmm.
Yeah. And she's 34 now.
Yeah.
Holy heck. Yeah.
So
Thanks
she's,
for asking about that,
yeah.
Jack.
Anything more you want to say about raising her?
Um, I mean, I think she raised me. You know, I mean, being a parent is like a huge learning
Experience.
experience. Yeah, and at every age, like your own birth material comes up, or your whatever trauma you experienced at that age is going to come up, and hopefully you'll be able to address it so you don't pass it on to your children,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
That's the whole subject of Robin Bill Girl's third book, which I was fortunate to edit and
Oh,
beautifully
wonderful.
explains it. Yeah. So now Eric also had Bodhi from the previous marriage, and I remember that you all three or five were still functioning as an extended family. And
Yeah. Yeah.
anything about that or how that was? It's admirable.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Jerry, Joe, and I, when Eric and I got together, we had a meeting, the two women, and we're like, we're going to get along, and we're an extended family. I mean, at that point, there was just Bodhi, but
Mhm.
I wanted it to be as friendly of an arrangement, of course, for him as possible and for everyone. And we've done well. We've done really well. She's Alice's godmother,
Mm.
one of her godmothers. So yeah.
And you and Eric are just amazing. Of what I've known you 30 some years, and
Oh,
how the two of you have this amazing dance that you're just uh,
Jack.
still
You haven't seen, I don't know how much you've seen of the difficult phases of that amazing dance. So
Well,
that
I've heard, I
it's,
know it exists, but
oh
you
yeah.
somehow
Oh
persist, and
yeah.
uh, I
I
don't know.
think I credit him for that.
Yeah.
He he's got this stick to itiveness and thankful. I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
Well, it feels like we're wrapping up here, but what else have I failed to ask about, and
My
what
God, you've asked
parting
so
words?
much. Yeah.
Anything significant we've missed?
I can't think of anything, Jack. I think we've covered it pretty well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so great to connect with you. I just want to express how dear you are to me, Jack.
Well, likewise, you felt like a sister for many, many years. I remember struggling through Marin's and my breakup, and you
Yeah.
were there for me, and just you know, been my sis, and I, in
Aw.
addition to a role model for all of the work you've done, and I'm so glad to have you join this venture of recording. So, uh,
Yeah.
any parting words you want, words of wisdom you want to pass on, or
Oh my goodness.
put you on the
Words of
spot?
wisdom. I mean, if I could give a message and just shout it out to the world, it's that women know how to birth. They know, our bodies know how to give birth, and just to have the respect for that, that there's so much medicalization of birth now. It's just so
Oh, yeah.
sad, is people don't realize the effect that it has on, the inability for a woman to bond with her baby, because the hormones, the as Michelle O'Donnell calls the cocktail of love hormones. Yeah, women are powerful. Women are magical and amazing. And please just trust yourself. I just a megaphone going out, you know,
There it is. Great
the
wisdom.
sacredness of physiological birth.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to end the recording, and
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack. It's been a pleasure. Much love.